Today's live. Before we get going, usual housekeeping. This is being broadcasted live not only on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, a couple of other platforms. So if somebody could just drop me a quick note so I know that you can hear me okay, see me okay. Secondly, it's StreamYard. So if you want to give permission for StreamYard to share your name, please do so, else we won't know who the questions and comments are coming from. So, okay, so okay, I can start to see people logging in. Okay, great. So let's get going. So many of you attended the panel, CEO panel, back at the end of July. And we literally ran out of time to answer everyone's questions. So everybody kindly agreed to come back on a one-on-one and do a deeper dive. So today I'm really happy to be able to bring back Beverly White, CEO of the Harvey Nash Group.
Hey, Suki. Great to see you again.
Likewise, how you doing?
Very good, thank you. Rainy, overcast day here in London.
That's London for you, right?
Right.
So, okay, so those that are new weren't able to watch the last panel. Do you quickly just want to give everybody a quick overview of who you are?
Yeah, of course. So I'm the group CEO of the Harvey Nash Group. Well, that's the job, which I'm very proud to do. Been here since February the 3rd last year, just before lockdown one, literally 6 and a bit weeks, I think. But I've spent more than half my career as a technologist. So my last big job was as a CIO. And then I moved from there into general management, into recruitment, and into general technology services and solutions. So I'm absolutely passionate about sailing and love to read, love poetry. I don't think we've ever talked about that, but
No.
another day maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great that you've got this whole technology background and now you're still doing that, but from the recruitment perspective, right? So
Right.
really excited to learn more about some of your experiences and things like that. So with that, let's jump straight in. As a woman CEO and leader, what have your key learnings and surprises been over the last 18 months? You you lead across 15 countries, so I imagine there will have been some different challenges in each region. So what did that mean for you as a leader? And what have you made your top priorities as a result of coming out of this pandemic? So I know there's a number of questions within that question.
Okay, yeah, great. So, as I said, I joined just before lockdown one in the UK anyway. And so I barely got to know people in the business. And given that we're in 15 countries, at that time, actually, we were in 14 countries. I'd met people mostly through this medium, through the power of my laptop and my iPad and Teams, thank goodness. So I think the first thing was really about learning to really make sure you're highly visible, highly available. That bit's really important. And that's something I've always done anyway. So that wasn't new to me. But I think it was, really thinking about it each day as I got up, who did I need to reach out to? Who might have been a little bit concerned last time I spoke to them? How can I reach people in different countries, different people to perhaps the ones I might have spoken to day to day? That became a really major priority for me. Working with my senior team was really important. So we pulled together. That was great, actually, because we got to know each other very fast. So we spoke every evening at 5 o'clock and we shared what was going on in our various parts of the world and what help we were able to do and how people were feeling and thinking and all those things. We talked a lot about how our clients could be helped, not from a commercial perspective, that life goes on commercially, but actually how we could support them through this whole process. So, I think that whole communication piece became ever more important. The availability piece became so much more important than it ever could have been so early on. And that team building bit was really key here. Would I as a woman CEO, was I doing things any different? I don't know. I was being me, I think. Which is, we're a people business, so we're a recruitment, we're a technology services business. We're a host of things, but fundamentally, it's all through people, and you miss that at your peril. So I think the things I carry with me is that whole point about, when you're available, be available. Don't be thinking about your next meeting. Don't be thinking about your next challenge. Really be present. That was the overwhelming thing that stuck in my head. People will know if you're not paying attention.
Sorry, and and that's so true because the availability piece. So I just made a couple of notes as you were talking. Um, I think the piece people have forgotten is that visibility piece and the fact that we're in a people business. Um,
Right.
and certainly from where I'm sitting, um, it became, I saw a lot of companies, the visibility was all about how do you get the dollar in, money in the
Mm.
door. But if I'm understanding you correctly, that wasn't really your objective of that visibility. And it was more about that supportive, that empathy, that compassion piece.
Yeah, look, we're a business, so we need to bring in money, so that we can reinvest and grow. That's important, but that isn't the primary. The whole primary purpose about visibility and talking to people is, if you get that bit right, everything else will come. You get that bit wrong, you might as well shut up shop. So, frankly, I spoke to a lot of people during the first 3 months of my tenure in the business. Spoke to all 90, I think it was 92, 93 people that were in senior leadership positions, every single one of them on a one-on-one basis, and then in collection groups as well. So I can understand, what was important to people. And our people spoke really regularly to the clients, the contractors, the candidates, just checking in. How are you? What can I do for you? We did all the things that everybody else did, of course, like the quiz nights and the health and well-being things, which became even more important as time went on. In fact, we launched a health and well-being hub, which my chief people officer, honestly, when she came to me and she said, I want to create this hub, and I said, that's fantastic, let's do that. And then she said, I want to make it available to everybody. I said, what, everybody? And she went, yeah, not just inside the business, let's make it available to anybody. So what, our competitors? And she said, yes. And best thing, absolutely right. Because we should be helping, all of us should be taking the responsibility of looking after people in the industry. And none of this it's difficult stuff. We curated some incredible content, some really good webinars, some great self-help stuff, and why wouldn't we make that available?
Yeah, and I think that was one of the times you and I connected because I'd seen that. And I
Yeah,
remember, and you and I actually had that conversation. It was authentic and you could see the care and the genuine. Unfortunately, there's a lot of companies, I'm not just talking our industry, just generally, who are ticking a box. Right? Are people seeing us being employee friendly, helping them and things like that? But one of the things that I absolutely remember was the how authentic it was and how genuine it was. And that's carried through. So she's done an amazing job. Right. So, but
definitely. She has. She's done an awesome job, and I'm going to be her biggest flag carrier, because the number of people that she will have helped that we will never know about, I think, I carry that with me. That's really important.
yeah, absolutely. And I guess that brings me on to another question. How has that helped the business in terms of retention? Because we are now coming out, for the most part, we're coming out the other at the other end.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
do you think that's helped retain some of your staff, or is it too early to tell?
Um, I mean, it's one of the many things, I think, that will help people know that this is the right home for them and their career at this point in their lives, because nobody, I think, stays forever.
Yep.
And so what you would love to know is that the time that people have with you, they've developed and grown, enjoyed it in the most part. Not every day can be fully enjoyable, of course, but for sure, I think it's one of the elements. We can always be better, and we are constantly striving to be better. There are, 1,000 different things that we can do better, and are working on them all the time. So I would be the first person to say, I will learn from everyone around me, my competitors, my colleagues, and so on. But yes, I think it will help. I think for sure, we know the market's very competitive. And, the last thing you want is somebody leaving and then saying to you, and you say to them, please, why are you going? You're so valuable. And then they say, well, I didn't know that. No one told me that. You would hate that, right? So it's so important that people know how valuable they are to your business, how much you care about their career. I think that's so important.
I think you're right, because not just our industry, every industry is seeing um, people leaving, right? A number
Yeah.
of different reasons. Um, in fact, I was speaking to a client the other day. So it was a client of a client's, and somebody had been made a counter offer, and he'd been asking for whatever it was that the company now countered with for 4 years. Too little, too late. Right.
Yeah.
And that equally applies in our business. The other piece that I love about what you're saying is employees feeling heard and seen, not necessarily agreeing, because hey, look, you've got to make
No.
decisions for the business, right? But
Mhm.
feeling seen, heard, valued, and not just employee number 1, 2, 3.
No, that would be a nightmare for me. It's one of those things, that you think in the middle of the night, are we doing enough? Can people really know that they can come forward and say things that, may not be popular and that may be hard to hear? And the answer for that has to be yes, we want that. So again, we introduced a tool. There are many tools in the market for engagement, but we brought this one in, and we asked a lot of questions, but nothing that took too long. And then we feed back through the management teams and the local teams. This is what you were saying. Let's talk about what you would like instead. And there's an Ask Bev element to it. So it comes directly to me anonymously, so that if people want to say something, from the heart, that it matters to them, but maybe they feel a little nervous to say it, they can. And I think that's really important. And I can respond back again to this anonymous um, person, which, is standing us in good stead. Sometimes you read and you go, "Ow, ouch," and you've got to own it. It's back to, this is a people business, and the people industry. We don't pay attention. Well, we deserve not to have great people in our business.
I think you just bring up a really important point. A, keeping it anonymous, right? So people don't feel, because then they feel that they can say exactly what they think, not what they think you want to hear. But I think there's
Yeah.
also a top down thing. And I think that's a mistake a lot of leaders make. And again, not just our industry, just generalizing. I think leaders don't enforce that from top down, and they give the, for lack of a better word, the accountability ownership at mid level, when really
Mm.
that's a top down initiative. The CEO or leader has to be open and willing to hear what is really being said, not what they
Yes.
want to hear. Right? It's that communicate. It all boils back down to that communication piece. And as you said, sometimes you go, ouch, right? But
Yeah.
when you have those ouch moments, that's your growth moments, personally, as a
Definitely.
business, and for your team. Open communication environment is key, encouraging people positive. Absolutely. Right. So, okay. So, the last part of that I just kind of want to touch on that question in a little bit more detail. What have you made? What are some of the top priorities you've now got as a result of coming out of this pandemic?
Yeah, so for sure, one size does not fit all. So every country is having its own recovery process. And of course, cultures are very different. So again, I feel I must pay real attention to that. So we've got many colleagues, for example, in Vietnam, and they are so valued. They've been going through such an incredibly tough time in the country. And initially that wasn't the case, but regrettably, things changed. And so making sure that, people know that we're thinking about them, that whilst we might be back more usually, perhaps in the UK, in Vietnam, we know that's not the case. And so, doing whatever it takes, sending little gifts, making sure that, we reach out and ask, is there anything we can do to help you? That will be different again in the US, different again in Poland and Switzerland and so on. Australia, of course, went through a really tough time with extended lockdowns. Again, you could see and hear it in people's voices, but it was taking its toll, and you really needed to make sure that you paid attention to that. So, as I said, one size doesn't fit all. When you're an organization, I'm British. That's my cultural, beginnings, I guess, but it's not where I end. Where I carry on my learning and journey is to make sure that I pay attention to the cultural differences, what's really important to people, here is different to people in the States or anywhere else. And I have to continue learning along with my senior team to make sure that we pay attention, we listen, we act. That's really key.
And be prepared to hear the real answers, not the answers that you want to hear. Right? I think that's
Definitely.
really
Yeah.
it is really important because, as I said, that's where the growth happens. So brings me on to, you mentioned the US. You acquired the business in the US last year in the midst of the pandemic. What
Yes.
was different, and what did you take away as lessons learned from that?
Yeah, it was fascinating. It's the first time I've done an acquisition in this way. So our US operations was good, but we knew it could be, really good. It's a fantastic market, probably the most mature, largest market in the world, and so our brand could have been better. So we were thinking about how could that be, and I'm going to say sometimes, you get luck in life, and this particular business was brought to me as I didn't know the name of it at the time, but the teaser document that you see whenever something comes on the market. And I was a little bit intrigued, and I thought, gosh, that sounds interesting. How do I find out more? So we did. We dug in a little bit more. I was quite new into the business, very new into the business actually, and so spoke to our private equity owners and said, look, this looks quite interesting. What do you think? We were still getting to know each other. They were fantastically supportive, as were our banks. My CFO and I did some initial engagement. And then what I really paid attention to here, more than anything else, that moment when you're kind of getting to know people and you really buy into the person. Well, I did that with these business leaders. They were fantastic, are fantastic, because they're leading our US business right now. We are so proud to kind of get to know them. They were so real, authentic. We could feel the match with what they do and the way we do it was just there. But what was really important, because we couldn't really meet, we couldn't go over and go and see them, was to actually pay attention to the data room. So we did. So we had very honest, open conversations, exploring deeply, really paying attention to not what we were thinking we were understanding, but what the reality, the data showed us. And actually, I think that stood us in good stead, because we formulated the strategy very quickly. We integrated on day one. So the business leader that came across became the business leader of the combined business, and within 3 months, the whole thing was integrated. And I'm going to say it's grown and grown. So proud of the teams out there, how well they've worked together and how they've come together for a common purpose.
It almost sounds as if it, and I use this very loosely and hope it comes across in the context it's meant, that the pandemic actually created the right environment for you to go away from that personal, yes, that personal relationship piece, but really focus on the data. What do the numbers really say?
Yeah.
And almost, for lack of a better word, park the emotional piece to one side.
Yeah, well, I think we were able to carve it up a bit.
Yeah.
So, in this way, just like you and I have never met in person yet, Suki, but I feel like I've got to know you
Well,
over
that'll
time
change
now.
next month once I've booked
Yes, it
my
will.
ticket, right?
Yes, it
But yeah,
will. Exactly. But we kind of built the relationships in this way. And then we went away and did the homework. And then we came back, with a renewed purpose. Right. This is what we found. Tell us about this. And really use that as our strong guide to how we would move forward. And I think it, as I said, it enabled us to create a very clear view of the strategy for integrating it and how we would move forward with it. And yeah, I would definitely do it that way in the future.
and did because I hear acquisitions going through and trying to integrate two different cultures.
Yeah.
Inevitably, it's for the most part, it's a very difficult thing to do anyhow, even when you're on the ground and things like that. Do you feel that it was actually easier just given the circumstances and the culture has been really integrated well? Um, or is there still work to be done on that because you're trying to do it remotely?
I don't think you're ever done, right? So, because I think it's an organic thing, isn't it? Culture just develops and shapes. It's not stuck, or it shouldn't be. I think that's when organizations get into trouble, actually. So, what I would say is there would definitely be things we could have done better. I take full accountability for those. All of the great stuff was done by the local people. I think they did an amazing job. So the teams came together. They had the hard conversations. They talked about their differences as well as their similarities. They talked about what the future could look like together, and they made it happen. And they really gave the time to listening, questioning, doing their homework on each other, really understanding how separate teams could move forward together and not separately. We've all been probably in organizations, either you've been acquired or you are the acquirer, and sometimes it doesn't quite work. Well, these guys really owned it, and they wanted to take people on the journey together. The bits that I think I take ownership for is I think you can always communicate much more clearly. I think you can um, be even more available. And I would take that with me next time around, because there were a few moments where I'm thinking, oh, I could have made that easier for the guys, on the ground if I'd just done this or just done that.
Yeah, I think on the panel, I think it was Craig Brown that said, when you think you've communicated, communicate some more. Right?
Definitely,
I think it was Craig
completely.
that, yeah, Craig that said that. So, okay, brings me on to my next question. As a woman in the tech industry, what are your observations about gender diversity over the past few years? Do you see this changing in the immediate future? If so, what is driving this change and what do you think will make it stick?
I think the making it stick bit's really important. So we run it's the largest tech survey of its kind globally. We've done that for, I think this is our 13th year. I might be wrong on that. Forgive me, because I don't, I've only got less than 2 years under my belt here. Nonetheless, a long time. And over those years, what we've seen is the number of women in tech leaders actually has really remained the same. So 11, 12%, something like that, of the total population of tech leaders are women. That's not changed. I find that I'm not someone who gets disheartened, because I'm very much a positive, glass half full, most definitely type person. But you've got to ask yourself, why is this? And actually, if you look at the intake coming into new jobs, actually it's fairly evenly balanced. There's a lot of women, a lot of gender diversity in total, but gender diversity for sure. And what has happened over the years is that maybe sometimes the culture's not been such that women have felt it supports them and their needs, or that they feel comfortable. Perhaps it's in the past, I'm not saying now, but maybe there was a lot of evening after work social stuff that actually perhaps if you're a young mum and the caring still falls largely to women, not wholly, because so many guys have got that brilliantly with their young kids, but nonetheless, if you can't go out after work, you must go home for your little ones. That kind of starts to become difficult, and then things slide and people fall away from the top jobs or come out of the industry completely. Now, during COVID, I say one of the positives, because I always try to find positives in anything here, is that as we were working from our homes, well, suddenly this fantastic talent who happened to be women, who people were able to do their work quite often, much more around childcare. I'm not saying it wasn't difficult, because I had countless calls and conversations with little ones on people's laps, and it was fabulous. I loved it, every second of it. But it was hard for parents to juggle childcare and the jobs. But it meant that more women suddenly became visible, were promoted more, actually wanted to stay in the industry. And if we continue to be this flexible and friendly towards different ways of living our lives, I think we have a better chance going forward of keeping women and having more women in the top jobs than we have done for many, many years. I'd say that's what it's going to take. We're going to have to continue to be flexible, not insist on long working hours, always in the office. There's no need for that, in my opinion.
I think also one of the things that I hear from my tech agency clients, and it's other verticals as well, but especially in tech, clients are having this conversation: how do we attract more women? Right? How do
Mm-hmm.
we bring more women in? How do we retain women? So I think you're right. There's definitely that shift is happening. But I can't remember, and I should have written it down. But I read an article that during the pandemic, a lot more women also decided to stop working, more
That
so
is
than
true.
men.
Yeah.
Right? So I think there's I mean, I've got my thoughts around why that happened. What are your thoughts around why that potentially may have been the case?
I think there's a bunch of things going on. Talking to many women in the industry, I think there was the realization actually that, with the threat of very real pandemic danger to people's lives, it caused us to all stand back and think what was really important in life. So I think for some people, that was a wake up call that actually this wasn't what they wanted. And so that's for some people. I think for others, where some organizations perhaps were less flexible, and they were juggling childcare or parent care or elder care, whatever it might have been, alongside the day job, it became impossible. And I think for some people that was enough. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. For many, many more, it was the positive, which I mentioned earlier, the short commute, the kitchen table, the under the stair workspace, whatever it turned out to be, and actually mixing that life. I think it's great when you hear somebody's dog barking, as long as they stop after a while, because I have dogs too. Or if a little one comes in and joins in a bit of a conversation, that's all right. That's great. That's life. It makes life much more interesting, much more enjoyable, and that work life comes together in a really solid way.
Do you remember that? I think it was on the BBC, that video from a
I
couple of
do.
years ago where
Yeah.
he's on the phone and the child comes
Yes.
in, right? And
Yes.
and at that time there was this, for the most part, there's a lot of people thinking, "Oh my God, how did that happen?" And it was right.
Yes.
And look at us now. That's normal.
Yeah, it is. It's
right?
wonderful.
It's
Yeah.
being accepted. It's more acceptable, and I
Hmm.
don't think that would have happened if we didn't have the pandemic in quite the same way.
No.
Um, but I think you're right, because you and I were speaking the other day about. I want to come back to the women in leadership. Um, the number of women in leadership within Harvey Nash.
Yeah, we've got more now. There's never enough, right?
Yeah,
But for sure, we've got two new women non-executive directors on our board as well, which is, we're really glad to have them on. They are industry stalwarts. One of them is ex-Facebook, the other one is ex-American Express. We're really proud to have them on our board. Mel Hayes, our Chief People Officer, incredible woman. We've got, Rona Carmichael, who operates in our Scottish and Irish and North businesses. She's the MD there. Fantastic. And I have so many people that are coming through in senior positions across the world that are just amazing. Heather Byron, who sits within our Nash Tech business. We've got all of these incredible women, and I might add some incredible men. And our diversity policy, I don't think we had one for sure, but for me this was about ripping up a policy and making our doors open for everyone to have a home. So I think you and I talked about this, but we are a long way from where we want to be. We really, really are a long way from where we want to be. Every single day, if I can look behind us and go, we're better than we were yesterday, we're better than we were yesterday, one more person feels at home, feels that this is their place and they can be their whole self. That's awesome. So that's our job. Keep doing that, and to have more people who want to have their careers, at least part of it, somewhere within our amazing business. That makes me happy. I've got to be honest.
yeah. You and I were talking the other day about how some people looking at it and saying, well, isn't that reverse discrimination, like actively
Mm.
trying to attract more um, women and as opposed to men? And I love the response you gave to me about the situation, that how you viewed that situation. So would you mind just quickly sharing that, how you handled that?
Yeah, I mean, of course. Look, I've had this many times in my career, so I've got to be really straight. I'm not a fan of quotas at all. I'm a great believer in best person for the job. But the thing is, in order to be the best person for the job, you've got to be visible. So you've got to open your doors wide, and make sure that you're talking to communities and parts of the world as a whole that maybe you haven't normally reached into. So people don't even know about you. So whenever people talk to me and say, I feel like you're discriminating me as a guy against me as a guy, and in my career I've had that. I always say, well, look, hang on a minute, let's talk about this. Tell me about you and your family. And quite often we get into, I've got a niece, or I've got a little daughter at home, and we talk about, well, what do you want for them? What's your greatest wish? Well, I want them to be able to achieve their goals. Well, isn't that what we're doing here? It's our responsibility to make businesses, wide open to your nieces and your daughters, for the future, your sisters, so that they can, be their full potential, reach their full potential. And that breaks down the barriers. Suddenly people go, oh, hang on a minute, what am I thinking here? Let's stop talking about man, woman. Let's start talking about humans, people, potential. I think if we start thinking in a very different way, and stop being so rigid in our thinking and ideas, what can we accomplish? It'd be amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's like breaking down those barriers and saying, okay, what's on the other side there, right? So
Right.
brings me on to my next question. As a CEO based in the UK, you've been experiencing the double impact, right? You've got Brexit plus COVID.
Right.
What impact has this had for your business? And what do you see what do you see will be the picture going into next year?
Yeah, great question. I mean, no doubt about it. It's been challenging. I don't know about you. I love challenges. It's a puzzle, right? How do you solve these things? Every day you're kind of looking and saying, right, well, hang on a minute, that seems a barrier. How do I get around that or over that, through that? So, I mean, Brexit, I think that's going to unfold, continue to unfold for the coming years, and is unfolding ahead of us. One of the things in the tech industry, for sure, if I just look at London alone, because that's where I'm sat today, about 20% of tech um, tech talent came from outside of the UK shores. And during the COVID crisis, when it was actually at its really, height, people, of course, could work from anywhere. And so if they, wanted to, they would go back to their homes and work from there. And then as, skill shortages bit, quite often they would find that actually they could stay there, even if their company wouldn't allow them to, because actually their skills were wanted in their home country. So we were losing people, or industries were losing people. But the second double whammy was this feeling, and I've talked to government ministers about this too, and it's a feeling, not necessarily one the governments are portraying at all, but is absolutely that, with Brexit, we're saying that we don't want people from overseas to work here. That's absolutely not the case. Sorry, there's some people celebrating some stuff in part of the office, so if you can hear it, I apologize. But I love to celebrate, right? So that's always a good thing. But I think the problem has been there's a perception. So we in the UK, and through all of the channels we can possibly use, including our governments, we need to make sure that people realise, we want talent from around the world to come here. We love to, work with great, talented tech people from, all around the world, and people need to realise that's the case. So, that has been definitely a double whammy challenge for us.
And not just tech. You and I were talking about the driver crisis,
Drivers, yeah.
right? Um,
Mm,
and yes, you got Brexit COVID that has contributed to that, but there, I done driving recruitment back in England way back when, and there was a shortage then, right? So you've got those skilled trades,
yeah,
and it and there was a shortage to begin with, and I think there's also it's not a career of choice, which is also impacted. So I think just generally as an industry, um, we've got to do a lot more to be encouraging people, not just women, but people to come into those trades as well. Um, and you said about COVID with people being able to work remotely. Yes, in tech that can happen, but there's still other industries
that's
and
right.
sectors.
You've got to be there.
Yeah,
Driving a lorry, you've got to be there.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's that part where as an industry we've got to be proactively, and I know you mentioned this the other day, working with governments saying what are we doing about this.
Absolutely.
It's a joint problem.
Yeah, we absolutely in industry and in our industries need to help solve the problems, not shout from the sidelines. So we have a part to play in that. That's really important. We can help show, give data, help the governments connect up the different parts of the industries so that we have a circular economy. So, as people lose jobs, so for example, the furlough scheme finished recently in the UK. And so I don't know the exact numbers, but it was certainly hundreds of thousands of people came off furlough. Now, not all of those will have gone back into their companies. Sadly, they won't, and so they'll be looking for work. And yet, we have a massive, skill shortage in a variety of different ways. So, retraining and bringing people into retraining, and then bringing them out into new jobs. That's how we can help.
But I think also just coming to women in the skilled trades and drivers, especially HGV, um, there's also this taboo around it, this stigma attached to it that
Mhm.
as an industry we've got to help get rid of. But also, again, going back to what you're talking about, working with the government, drivers, was it yourself that was telling me that in the UK for drivers there's no official stops and they have to stay on laybys?
There are
Okay.
some, but very few. I don't know the exact number. I think someone told me once, and it's probably a wrong number, so I'm scared to quote it. But anyway, 100, let's say, throughout the whole of the UK. And so, but either way, there's been a lot reported recently that, you see it. Trucks have to be parked up in laybys that don't have facilities. Now, to encourage women into this industry, into driving, for example, that makes it tough. How secure do you feel? There's nowhere, there's no bathroom. Where are you going to get some food? Are you safe? All of those things. So we
Yeah.
have to think about everything, I think, when we're thinking about how we attract, new people into the industry, especially women.
Yeah, because that they're real serious concerns, and to your point, unless we come together with government and help
Right.
them connect as an industry, and you're sitting in the UK, I'm sitting in Canada, this applies wherever in the world we are. As an industry, we've got to be far more vocal, and we've got to lead that conversation, not be the followers, because we're the
Exactly.
experts in that, right? We're the
Exactly.
experts in that. And that's what we need to be doing, because ultimately, if we look at our industry, right, it should be a career of choice. It
Yeah.
should be far more available, because what we do is amazing,
Mhm.
right? We help
Yeah.
economies, we help people. But again,
Absolutely.
it's not a career of choice, right? People tend to go HR or they fall into this. So
Yeah.
collectively, we need to have a louder voice, a stronger voice. And
Completely agree with that. I mean, most people I've spoken to in the industry say exactly this point. I fell into it actually, but I met one person so far in my Leeds office who said to me, when he was at university, he actively chose recruitment as a career. I could have hugged him because I thought this is fantastic. Now I need you to talk loudly about this and why you chose that. But as you say, we've got a grandstand seat on, the front row of people's careers. How amazing is that? We're helping organizations find great talent so they can thrive, and we're helping people find great businesses. So, that whole matching together, when it comes together, is amazing.
yeah, and what with the flexible workforce and everything, and it's, as an industry, I don't think we're there yet. Um, but as an industry, there's a flexible workforce that we could use ourselves.
Right.
We seem to think every person needs to be full time, client
Hmm.
facing needs to be full time, and things like
Sure.
that. So I think there's a gap there for us as well. The other person that consciously came into this industry was Travis O'Rourke. The Remember he mentioned that on, I think it was,
You
you
did.
said he, yeah. So that's two people you now
There you
know.
go.
So there you go. So okay, I want to just, I know I'm conscious of time. So the reality is there is so much more that the Harvey Nash story has yet to write. Is there something that you're sitting there and you're thinking, you know what? This is what's going to happen to Harvey Nash 2022, 23. Is there something that's happening in the background that we can get a sneak look in? What does that future look like?
Yeah. So, a lot of people know us as a recruitment business, and we are proudly a recruitment business. Of course, that was our heritage. We started 31 years ago, I believe, just in tech recruitment. It's fantastic, and we are even more than that. So we are a tech solutions business too, and we have 1,700 people in Vietnam, where we are, building AI and robotics and so on. So, I really want people to understand that we have the power of talent and the power of technology coming together. And I think that's where the magic happens when you bring those two things together for a client. It's fantastic what you can achieve. So we're focusing on making sure that we we bring all of that collaboratively together.
Perfect. I look forward to learning more about that and absolutely just following the journey this that your chief people officer has done around the whole diversity because so important. Bev, really appreciate you taking the time today
Welcome.
to talk to us. Now, if people want to reach out,
Probably, well, you can reach me on LinkedIn, of course. So I'm always on LinkedIn. So I would do that.
cool. Well,
Yeah,
thank you ever so much for your time today. I know you're really
welcome.
busy and sharing your valuable knowledge with us. And I look forward to speaking to you again in the future.
Thanks, Suki.
You
Pleasure
take care.
talking.
Thank you.
Bye.